If you look at the Isetta for the very first time, it seems like a joke. Small, round, and with a funny little front door that opens like the door of a refrigerator. And yet most people have no idea that this tiny bubble car was born from the refrigerator industry, saved BMW from bankruptcy, and became one of the most successful microcars in automotive history. But its story goes far deeper than its shape. After World War II, Italy was stuck in a severe economic crisis. People couldn't afford even a simple car, fuel was expensive, and the streets were overflowing with scooters. ISO, a company that built refrigerators and heaters, found itself in the same struggle. Demand was falling, and the business needed saving. Its owner, Renzo Revolta, realized something important. If people couldn't afford a traditional car, then the solution was to build a car they could afford. ISO engineers Ermenegildo Preti and Pierluigi Raggi began developing an entirely new type of vehicle. Light, compact, economical, and incredibly cheap to maintain. They took the engine from ISO's own scooter, used the rounded shape of a refrigerator as inspiration for the body, and, in 1953, they unveiled the very first Isetta. Despite its funny appearance, the Isetta was an impressively well-engineered machine. The front door was mounted together with the steering column, so when you opened the door, the entire steering wheel swung outward with it. This allowed the designers to install a full-width bench seat and use every centimeter of interior space. Getting inside was surprisingly easy, even for such a tiny car. The rear track was extremely narrow, only 52 centimeters between the wheels. The idea behind this was simple. Save space, improve stability at low speeds, and avoid the need for a differential entirely. It made the car cheaper to build, easier to maintain, and lighter overall. So although the Isetta technically had 4 wheels, it looked almost like a 3-wheeler, and because of that, in many regions, you could legally drive it with just a motorcycle license. The original Italian engine came straight from an ISO scooter. It produced 9.5 horsepower and consumed around 3 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers. The interior was reduced to the absolute essentials: a single speedometer, a gear lever, a few ventilation flaps, and a small shelf behind the seat. This was a vehicle built with one clear purpose: to give people a car for the price of a motor scooter. But why did the Isetta fail in Italy? The answer is simple. Italians wanted a real car. The Fiat 500 appeared almost at the same time, with a classic silhouette, 4 seats, and conventional doors. Compared to that, the Isetta looked too unconventional, too strange. It simply couldn't win the battle on its home market. ISO realized this and made an important decision. They would sell production licenses to other companies, to those who could turn the Isetta into something bigger than a niche experiment. And this is where Germany enters the story. 1954. In post-war Germany, BMW was in serious trouble. Most types of production were banned for them after the war. Their factories were damaged or destroyed, and their expensive luxury models, the 501 and 502, barely sold. Mercedes-Benz was already preparing a takeover plan. BMW was one step away from disappearing entirely. To survive, the company desperately needed a cheap, mass-market, fuel-efficient car. And then their engineers saw the Isetta. At first, they laughed, but very quickly they realized this strange little bubble might be the opportunity they couldn't afford to miss. BMW completely redesigned the Isetta structure. They installed a 4-stroke engine from the BMW R25 motorcycle, producing 12 to 13 horsepower. They strengthened the frame and suspension, upgraded the electrical system, redesigned the headlights, and improved the aerodynamics. In effect, the Italian Isetta was transformed into a truly German car, reliable, economical, and suitable for everyday use. The first to appear was the Isetta 250, followed by the 300, and later the longer BMW 600, a model that became the first step toward BMW's future sports engineering. In Germany, the Isetta instantly became a symbol of a new beginning. It gave mobility to people who hadn't been able to afford a car for years. It was cheaper than a motorcycle with a sidecar, more comfortable, more economical, and warm enough to use even in winter. Between 1955 and 1957, sales skyrocketed. The Isetta became BMW's best-selling model of that era, with more than 160,000 units sold, more than any other BMW at the time. But the Isetta became famous for more than just numbers. One of the most incredible stories is about Klaus Jacobi, a young mechanic from West Berlin. In 1963, he modified his Isetta so that a person could hide in the rear compartment. Using this tiny car, he managed to smuggle his best friend across the Berlin Wall and later helped 9 more people escape. At the border checkpoints, no one even considered searching such a small bubble on wheels. The Isetta didn't just bring economic freedom. Sometimes, it literally saved lives. Although the Isetta looked like a toy, it was actually very well engineered. It had an independent front suspension, and its drag coefficient of 0.38 was comparable to that of modern crossovers. The engine could be removed from underneath the car in just 10 to 12 minutes. It could be parked sideways in tight spaces, and thanks to its wheel geometry, it remained stable despite its narrow rear track. The stretched Isetta 600 became the first BMW to use a semi-independent rear suspension with angled trailing arms, a layout that later became the basis for sporty BMW models such as the 2002 and the first M3. All of this made the Isetta a clever piece of engineering wrapped in a very unusual-looking shell. By the early 1960s, people were becoming more affluent. They wanted full-size cars, and the era of microcars was coming to an end. BMW stopped producing the Isetta and shifted its focus to the BMW 700, and later to the models that would build the company's modern legacy. But it was the Isetta that gave BMW the chance to survive and to become what it is today. But the story doesn't end there. Today, the idea of the Isetta has returned. The Swiss company Micromobility Systems created the Microlino, an electric remake of the original bubble car, keeping its iconic design while adapting it to modern urban and environmental needs. It's a reminder that clever ideas never truly disappear. They simply wait for the right moment to come back. The Isetta was never just a tiny car. It became an example of how an unconventional engineering solution can influence the direction of an entire company and even shape its future. And what unusual car in history impressed you the most? Let us know in the comments.